Thank you, Louisa, and thank you to all speakers and for your excellent intervention and preventions. And it's my pleasure to kickstart the panel discussion. So we have a very packed panel discussion, as you can see, many speakers, but who will be providing really interesting insights on both the EU level, so what the EU HTA regulation looks like for patients on a European level, and then we will be going to a national level. So to really be able to bridge this European and this national level. And to kickstart this conversation, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Valentina Strabiello. Valentina is the CEO of the European Patient Forum, who are a member of the EU HTA multi-stakeholder network. And Valentina, to kickstart your intervention, a couple of questions. So as I mentioned, your organization is part of the multi-stakeholder network, and it would be really interesting for us to have an idea of what is the role specifically of patients or organizations in the network on ensuring the patient involvement. We had some points from Maya, but it'd be very interesting to get also the perspective from one of the members. And also, if you have some time to also give us an idea of maybe some resources that you're putting forward to support patient involvement. Thank you.
Thank you, Josephine, for this invitation, and good afternoon, everyone. So Maya has mentioned some aspects indeed, and I can say patient organizations have already played a key role in the negotiation phase before the implementation of the HTA regulation started. So we have played a key advocacy role in ensuring and supporting meaningful patient involvement. Now that we are part of the HTA stakeholder network and that the implementation is in action, we further contribute to the identification process of patient profiles, as we are some of the key contacts that the HTA Secretariat has in place to identify relevant profiles. At the same time, we keep playing an advocacy role, promoting methods for patient involvement, and also coordinating this effort among patient organizations. As Maya mentioned, we are 25 patient organizations, and we are collectively trying to coordinate this effort because, of course, it's a completely new structure and framework. It's not self-evident that we are able to come up with a procedure. And so it took us some time to develop a procedure, to coordinate internally, and I feel so far it's working quite effectively. Maybe another element I wanted to mention is that besides the identification of patients, we play a role in training patients and coaching them. Once profiles become available, of course, there is a need for them to better understand what HTA is, and we try to also play that role a bit in advance before the engagement starts, because we need to prepare the community ahead of the potential engagement in a JCA or in a joint scientific consultation. So I would say it's a continuous effort that also implies, I would say, a bit of intelligence, trying to understand what the new JCAs might be, or the new joint scientific consultations might be. Of course, all of this information is strictly confidential. So we try, I would say, very openly to connect the dots with the information that is accessible and accessible to the public, basically. We have been quite successful so far in identifying relevant profiles, and the numbers that Maya has shared are quite impressive. I must say, when we started this effort earlier this year, I was not so confident it would work so well, but I'm very happy to see that it's working quite smoothly, even though we all acknowledge it's a work in progress. When it comes to the tools and methods, we constantly work to identify what can work to support patient involvement. And now, indeed, with Cancer Patients Europe and EPF, we are leading on a new project under HTA International, which is meant to develop recommendations and tools to promote patient involvement in JCA. But we have already produced a number of trainings under the UCAPA project and HTA for Patients projects. Both of them are U4Health program projects that were meant to really train patients that may be potential participants in the joint work on the European level. Of course, I would like to add all of these materials are specifically relevant to interaction on the European level, but it may be very useful also for patients that are active on the national level, because learning about HTA, I would say it's never enough. And so all the material that is available can be relevant to other patients as well.
Thank you, Valentina, for giving us this quick overview. And I warmly invite you, you or a colleague from EPF on this call, to share links to the resources you're mentioning. I think it would be very useful, and we, of course, would also be happy to share these following the call. And so then to continue among our speakers, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Marcus Garden. Marcus Garden, who leads work at the Brussels Center for Collaboration in Health on engaging patients once they've been selected to join an assessment. So you are at the part where the patient has been identified, their profile has gone forward. Now they're in the thick of things and they're working ahead. So Marcus, I know you have some slides, so you're more than welcome to share them and to give us this overview. And we're, of course, really interested in hearing about the resources that you are also putting forward to support patients in their involvement in assessments.
Josephine, thank you so much for the invitation. Just to double check, do you want me to share the slides?
My colleagues can do it as well, so I will let my colleagues take care of it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. And again, thank you for the invitation. I'll try to keep it short and crisp, especially as the speakers before me have already, I think, outlined the most important things. So you can just skip ahead. This is just a promotional, slightly self-inflated slide deck here. And then if you go to the next slide, that I think is much more informative. So you heard about the European process. You heard about all the HTA bodies that are part of it. And the HTA bodies formed a consortium to answer to build the system. They are all members of the coordination group. This is just sort of a different way to look at the same group of HTA bodies. And these HTA bodies have brought together have been brought together in a consortium. The consortium is led by the Belgium HTA body, and the Belgium HTA body created BCCH as an implementing organization to deal with all the administrative work. And this is sort of where the connection comes to what you discuss here today. So Maya so excellently showed also in her slides the very meticulous process that goes into identifying and selecting and confirming and bringing about the right patient, the right expert for the right process. And once the patient or the expert is selected, we see them come to us. And us as BCCH, and I have one slide to briefly explain to you what we, BCCH, do in the overall process. And then sort of I try to identify a little bit of what that means for you. The next slide sort of gives a very brief overview of what we do, and that is primarily support and project management for the processes and JCA and JSCs. So here we support the HTA bodies in their work on a very basic level. So we provide meeting spaces and help them with IT elements for communication and things like that. We provide meetings and reporting support. We are the primary contact point for administrative questions between the consortium and HTA. And we, of course, facilitate the collaboration between our members. But primarily and most importantly, we contract, or we are the ones that provide the contracts and the confidentiality agreements with patients and experts. And that sort of is one of our key tasks. And here I just try to dive in very briefly. Once the expert and the patient is selected, we are being informed via the EU IT platform of the email address of that individual. We then reach out to the patient and we try to establish contact. And once that contact has been established, we provide further information about the process, what is expected in that process, and we try to ensure that there is clarity about the process. All our information sets, be them in email or be them on our website, which I relate to in a moment, are of course coordinated with all other players in the field. So we are closely working together with the team of Maya and her great work there, so that this goes hand in hand. We equally collaborate with, thankfully, with Cancer Patient Europe and other organizations in the field to really make also the material that we have on our website that was aforementioned from Valentina, who has been part of great initiatives there. We try to bundle that information set on our website to make it available as well. And try to provide as much support as we can. In the future, we hope to further build out our patient and expert hub. I'll show you a brief screenshot of it in a moment, but what we try to do here is really bring together all the information that we can find and that is approved by the subgroups, but also by the commission, and have a very good overview, not only for those patients that are selected, but also for anyone else who's interested in the field and is potentially interested in participating as an expert or as a patient expert in these processes. The next slide is very briefly to give an overview of what you as a patient might meet. So which actors in the field you might see, and I'm not going to go into depth of each of them because we've heard a lot about them, but it's just sort of to make you aware that these are the actors in the field from whom you either will receive information or you will hear about, or whose work you are influencing and whose work you are hopefully guiding in the right direction. So this is just sort of to highlight that our work is a small part of a much bigger role that others have to play. We try to be here in supporting you with the contract. We will provide you with the financial reimbursement of your work from a BCCH perspective. We will try to be in these regards, your one-stop shop. And if there are any other issues, we of course will try to be there for you and answer questions. And where we can't answer questions, we will make sure that any other of these players who have their own roles to play will provide you with the answers that you need. We see that as our support role here, and wherever we can, we will try to be out there and sort of be next and be beside you and in that process. And if you go for the last slide, I'm aware of the time. This is sort of a very brief summary in terms of what we try to do with our hub. The hub has two elements. It has a public side, again, that brings together information material that is out there, that has been approved, that is really a great resource, and we just try to compile it. We take no ownership of this. This is entirely up to those who have built it over years, and we can only applaud to the great effort that has gone into it. And we provide the links. We try to sort of bundle this information set. But then we also have a closed section, a secure environment, which we use for communication with selected patient experts. So here we really try to provide you then with your contract, the payment material, the payment information that might be necessary, or anything else that is important for the conduct of your work, other than, of course, information that is provided you by the colleagues at the Commission, which use the secure EU IT platform. So that's really important to keep in mind. There are two platforms you will deal with, one from the Commission and one from us. We will deal with the contracts, the payments, and anything else that is related to that. And the work on the specific product is dealt with on the EU IT platform from the colleagues of the HTA Secretariat. And I'll try to wrap it up here. My main message is we are entirely grateful, and I personally always stand in awe about the great participation interest from patients in this process. I just, and Valentina, this is a shout out to you. I just remember the very first meeting of the Parliament Committee in 2016, I think it was, when we started to launch this entire procedure, about this legislative procedure. And since then, there was so much effort and energy from patient organizations, and to see now 180 already potential identified patients and experts here for the 9 products that we have assessed or are assessing at the moment. I think that's fantastic. We couldn't be more grateful, and from our side, we will do everything possible to make this process as smooth as possible. And yes, we're starting, so there might be some hiccups, there might be some bumps in the road, but please don't be shy. Tell us when you see bumps. We will try to smoothen them out as much as possible, and we try to be as responsive as we can. So thank you so much for being on board. Thank you so much for considering it. We hear a few more information on sort of how our website looks like, how the hub looks like. But once you are selected, feel free to go there. But even if you're not selected or if you're just interested, you will find material there. We leave the information here with the colleagues from Cancer Patients Europe. They can share that with you, and we make sure that you have access to the public sector for sure. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Marcus. And thank you for the invitation to share the bumps. I am taking this up right now. No, jokes aside, thank you so much for this presentation. And we will also be sharing this material. It's my pleasure to introduce you all to my colleague Frédéric to provide you with an overview of how the process has gone so far. As Marcus has said, as Maya mentioned, some patients have already been involved in the identification process and have already been involved in assessments. And while the process is very new, as it's only been implemented since January, there are already some early lessons that we have been able to draw upon. And Frédéric, it's my pleasure to invite you to share some of those initial insights from patients. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Josephine, and thank you for welcoming here. As mentioned by Jacqueline during her introduction, at Cancer Patients Europe, we see the implementation of the HTA regulation as a major step forward for patient engagement. And as part of the HTA, EU HTA Stakeholder Network, CP works closely with the European Commission to ensure smooth transition, especially by identifying patients and experts for joint clinical assessments and joint scientific consultations, and to better understand how this process unfolded. And since our role pretty much stops in a way after the identification process, we conducted a survey among the patients we have contacted, and our goal was simple. It was to learn how they experienced their involvement and how the process could be improved. And the good news is that the results are pretty encouraging. Respondents gave an average certification rating of 4.1 out of 5, and most expressed their willingness to participate in the process. So they particularly appreciated the accessibility and the responsiveness of the HTA Secretariat, as well as the support received from the members of the stakeholder network. And between the first and second identification rounds, communication became clearer and better structured, thanks in part to the Commission's fact sheet, which explain the HTA process and the status of GCAs and GSEs. And given that 60% of respondents were not familiar with the process beforehand, this resource was especially valuable. And as a last point, collaboration within the stakeholders network's working group was also seen as a positive and constructive through our results. But of course, there are still points of vigilance. So many respondents cited the language barrier as a major obstacle, as everything is conducted in English, and another 20% mentioned difficulties navigating through the EU login platform for registering, which sometimes almost discouraged participation in a way. And also, very short deadlines were also an issue for the conducting of the identification process for experts who could take part in GCS and GACs. But however, these challenges were acknowledged and addressed, since the survey, which has been conducted in June, to recontextualize a bit, we've seen genuine openness from the Commission and the HTA Secretariat. They extended, for example, tight deadlines, improved communication tools, as seen with the fact sheet I've mentioned, and acknowledge administrative burden, such as processing with documents, like the declaration of interest, for example. So this shows a willingness to listen and adapt, which is exactly what implementation should look like. And at CPE, we strongly welcome this openness and trust that future notification processes will continue to build on this constructive feedback, so that patients' voices are not left unheard. And in this context, we remain optimistic. The improvements we have already witnessed show that this process is dynamic and evolving in the right direction in some way. So this is pretty much what can I say about patients' involvement in GCAs.
Thank you, Frédéric. So, some good news. Things are already moving ahead. Process has been going well from the patient standpoint, but of course, we can always do better. And this is what we strive for, so that the process is truly inclusive and truly ensures that patients have a qualitative input in HTA assessments. And so now this was me wrapping up the European section of this panel. And of course, this discussion was about what does it mean at a local level? And this is very important to make sure that we understand, okay, but there's this EU HTA regulation at the European level, but locally, what does it mean for the patients in the different countries of the EU? And I'm delighted to now open the discussion to more national level speakers. And to kickstart this conversation, I'm delighted to introduce you to Alessandra Lo Scalzo. Alessandra works for the Italian National Agency for Regional Healthcare Services, otherwise known as AGENAS, and she's specifically working on medical devices. And I think there's some very great initial learnings from the Italian side. So it's a pleasure to have you here. And so my two questions to you are, what is the patient involvement in HTA look like in Italy up until now? And what has been the impact on the EU HTA regulation on patient involvement in HTA in Italy? Alessandra, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me and to give me the chance to share our experience. How was the system before and how the system is now? The HTA regulation and the governance structure and the European system and the implementation we are seeing now had an impact on our system and on HTA patient involvement, which was disruptive, I can say, because before, until now, I mean, because it's a toddler, we are now in the process of doing things in a new way. Before, the patient involvement in our assessments was fragmented, was not systematic. We decided to involve patients on an ad hoc basis when we had resources, and you never have resources. And when the policy question from the Ministry of Health were to focus on the social domain, we think about the famous core model, the UNETA core model. So when we were asked to involve, and it was like the 10% of the reports we involved. This means that at the time, we didn't involve patients, we didn't collect their views when we did assessment, that they were just focused on the clinical domains. So this was the situation before. What the HTA regulation, with its example, has done to our system. We have learned two lessons, basically. First, that we can involve not only patients, but all stakeholders, so the entire society that is around the HTA, at a systematic level and at a strategic level as well. So they can have their voice heard on the program for HTA at Italian level. I will tell you something more in a bit. And the other lessons learned is that we can involve patients not only when we have the social domain focused on, because there is a policy question on that, but also when we have a joint clinical assessment, when we focus on the clinical domains. And so I think that this will improve and will make our system more inclusive. So for the first level, at a strategic level, what we have done, 2 years ago we have approved a national program for HTA medical devices, and in this national program we have a new actor that was not present before, and it is the stakeholder network, the national stakeholder network. And Agenas coordinated this network. We had the first meeting last week. So we are at the very beginning of our path with all the stakeholders. We have 41 organizations within our network, scientific society, patient associations, organization active in health. And it was really a meeting that gave us the chance to heard their voice on the entire program, so not only on the single assessment, how they can, what they need, what they think that can be improved. So it was really an inclusive process, and it gave us the chance to hear what they have to say, all of them. Of course, the patients association that are present for the patients part. At a report specific level, what we are doing, we are using and adapting to our art system the templates, the process, the methods that we are developing in the JCA subgroup, basically. So we are now producing 2 new reports. Those 2 new reports are focused on the clinical domains, but for the first time we decided to have a public call to involve experts, patient experts, for the scoping phase. So in 2 reports that they are the first 2 that before didn't provide any involvement, because we were not asked to focus on the social domain. Now we are involving them, I have to say, thanks also to the stakeholder network at national level, because this is a channel to find experts, patient experts, and it is a channel also for a new dialogue and for an HTA that is more inclusive also at national level. So I think that the European system has been very important to improve our way of involving patients in Italy, and I think that this will be better in the next year.
Thank you so much, Alessandra. And it's very encouraging to see that 9 months into the implementation of this new regulation, we are seeing concrete change. And we're seeing at one national level, at least, that we're going from an ad hoc to systematic involvement of patients. I think that's extremely encouraging. And this is a very concrete change. It's very tangible, right? So this is excellent, and very interesting to also hear that you're adapting processes. So this is a clear illustration of how change at a European level can lead to change in a national level, which is the whole goal of this regulation and this patient involvement. So very encouraging words. Thank you so much, Alessandra. And this brings me to have another speaker, Susan Tippen from the German GBA, which is the General Joint Committee. And Susan works at the unit on patient participation. And so, Susan, I'm going to have similar questions to you as for Alessandra. Very interested in hearing from your end, from the German perspective, what does patient engagement in HTA look like in Germany? What are specific measures that the GBA has put in place? And are there any early lessons that you can share with us on how the EU HTA regulation has been informing or not processes in Germany? Susan, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for the invitation. I prepared some slides, but I think it's not in much time to go into it because it's very complicated for the German perspective. Because we're doing this since 2004, now 21 years. We do early benefit assessment here in the GBA Federal Joint Commission, and it's the HTA process, and we are a decision-making group. So we have now in the moment minimum of 300 patient representatives from 100 of patient organizations. We have today a session now, we have 25 patient representatives being involved in the meeting with all the stakeholders. And so we discussed all the important issues. And we prepared as well here in the committees the PICOs, which is the most important thing to get the right PICO. That's the most important thing for the end. And so it's not very new for the German side. Since 2008, there is a special patient participation staff unit here in the GBR. We're only responsible for support patient representatives. We're about 15 people here working from different kind of profession. We do since 20 years training courses, and we do training in evidence-based medicine, special things we need for the German, because we have very, very much things to support. We talk about methods and medical products and pharmaceutical products. And so everything which we do here and decide here is for every German patient, the law, for instance. But we first started because the German law said the GBA has to implement patient representatives. And for me, from my point of view, what I see is the most important thing for me is the patient's organization. They decide who comes to the committee. Not the stakeholder, not the working group, not the patient organization. This person is the one who said and represents the indication. And what we had as well, we have patient representatives there for the specific topic, and we have general patient representatives, because you can't leave them alone. This is what we know from 20 years now, because the discussions that we have here is so complicated and so high on a statistic level that you need both. You need the complete and really competence for the patients, what is really the living with the disease, and you need something to translate this into the language of a committee. And this is because when we get the clinical joint assessment from the EQUIC, it is still now, because every new active substance which comes on the German market has to put in a JCA report. Then the EQUIC says it has a high benefit, middle benefit, low benefit, no benefit, always compared to the standard therapy. We can change everything here. Yeah, because evidence follows the price. That's what we learned. It's all about the price. So you can put the evidence in this way and in that way. And so it's a hard discussion for every decision we make here for every new active substance. So they're quite trained. And because we then know what's new is the PICO. We're sad about the PICOs at the moment, because before that we could bring more importance for the patient into the PICOs on the local level, which are the most important PROs, patient-reported outcomes. But now on this national level, everything from our perspective, we said there's nothing standing inside there. They just says comparator is this, endpoints are this, and look for the right instrument to find it out. So before we had more income from the patient to say we want to see this patient-reported outcome. Fatigue is very important for multiple sclerosis. And it became real, quality of life. We were the first person who said we want quality of life in the studies. So we now because on the national level, for me, for myself, for instance, I'm not so quite familiar with the European level. But we would like to bring more input from the German representatives since 20 years, and they're very good.
Thank
But
you.
you need to support them. You need to support them. You can't leave the only. What we feel is one sentence I have to say, because with the we have this written input from patients to the report. I would say there is no influence on that. What we think here, for us, the discussion in the committee and to fight directly with the payer and the doctors, that's more important. But it's my special German view of it, because I think it's so different. So it's very hard but I can understand it's very new for you, and it can put an input. It's very important. Thank you very much. Maybe the slide would be helpful, but I know it's not no time.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you. We were indeed ambitious with the speakers. So, to quickly summarize what you said, I think it's really interesting, and this is something really important for everyone to be aware. Patients can be involved in HTA also at the national level, which can also influence discussions at the European level. And Susan brought forward a very interesting and really important element called the PICO. And for those of you who are not aware, the PICO is a research question that guides the HTA discussions. And what does PICO stand for? PICO stands for Patients, Problems or Population, Intervention, Comparison, and Outcome. And as Susan rightly said, PICO is central to HTA. And this also brings me to mention what Valentina was saying earlier on a project we're leading on HTA International, which is to make sure that patients have more of a say on PICO. And this is obviously led, for example, in Germany at the national level, but we're hoping to also make sure it happens at the European level. So stay tuned. This is one of the initiatives that we are leading on also at CPE. And having said that, I think it's really important to also get the patient perspective on what patient involvement in HTA looks like. And it's my pleasure to invite Iga Rawikia from EuropaCall in Poland to share some input and insights into what patient involvement looks like in Poland, and what are some learnings that you can share with us? Thank you very much, Iga. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation. And to be honest, I am very proud to share my presentation with you and the Polish perspective. Just the question if I will have the slides. I was said that I will, so maybe we will wait a moment.
Yes, can you see the slide on the share screen?
We can't see them yet, Anna.
No.
Okay. Just a moment.
Okay, so in the meantime, I am Iga Rawicka from EuropaCall Poland, and we cover GI cancer, so quite a lot, I would say. And we are involved in HTA assessment. So, okay, thank you very much. So next slide, please. Okay, so I received 3 questions from for today's webinar. The first one is, how are patients involved in HTA in Poland? So there are 2 ways: by invitation from HTA, or proactively. So you can be invited, and then you will be asked to assess current treatment of a given disease entity, or patient problems and needs, or the benefits of using a specific medicine. Or you can involve proactively, which means that you can participate in Transparency Council meetings, simply registering and completing the industry conflict of interest, or by submitting comments on the published peer review analysis. I have not attended the Transparency Council meeting yet, but I have already personally was involved to share the assessment with HTA by invitation and by from our own point of view. Next slide, please. Thank you. So what are the main facilitators to patient engagement? So giving more time to prepare position on the matter. Education materials are written in plain language, for example, to understand health technology analysis or complete the declaration of conflict of interest. We can send the documents by email, thanks to including a trusted signature. The agency, as it's at its website, also explains how we can get involved in the work of the European HTA process, which is really very cool. We have dedicated patients action at the agency website, and information of any PACS involvement is published both at the agency website and in the weekly newsletter. Previously, it was only the full report available. Next slide, please. And from the other side, we have barriers. And for example, there is lack of legislative authority, significant variation among patient organizations in terms of both legal status and level of expertise in HTA. For example, there are some patients advocacy groups who are really experts on the national and global levels, but others are not yet so experienced because they just started their journey with healthcare system. Also difficulties in meeting the formal requirements, meaning that they have problems with completed and signed declaration of conflict of interest, which finally results in the inability to submit the opinion. Next slide, please. The third question was, how has patients' engagement in HTA in Poland impacted access to therapies? Has it had a positive effect? Yes, it has. And how? Patients' voices provide a valuable complement to the evidence gathered in the HTA reports. Patients can share insight from their perspective, meaning on their lives with the disease or the impact of therapy on daily functioning. PACS are empowered and they are really feel patient centricity, I would say. PACS also have a real, I have written, although indirect influence on shaping drug policy in Poland, because obviously the drug policy is created by the government, the Ministry of Health, and it could be also created by the clinicians, by financial experts, pharmacovigilance, and by patient advocacy groups. However, for me, having over 25 years of experience in this market, I am still a little bit skeptic if we have direct or indirect influence, and we can discuss it here. So next slide. I would like to read the statement from the Vademecum for Patients, which was created by Polish HTA. It says, does my voice count? Yes. The HTA Council wants to hear from you about what is not included in the application from a pharmaceutical company or the agency's verification analysis. How has the therapy changed your life? What significant differences have you experienced? Perhaps after the therapy, you were able to return to work, or perhaps you gained an additional 4 hours a day without pain, which allowed you to reduce the dose of other medications or engage others to help you with daily functioning, or reduce the number of hospitalizations. Has this therapy given you hope? If you haven't participated in the therapy yet but have other important information you would like to share, please register to attend the HTA Council meeting, which means that you have really possibility to share your experience. And the next and final slide, it says that increasing patient involvement in the HTA process is one of the Polish Health Technology Agency's goals. And here I would like to thank really a lot Polish health technology assessment, Polish health technology agency for their help and transparency, and to all 300 employees who work in health technology agency in Poland, because they are doing a great job. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Iga. Thank you for this presentation. And I think these insights and this input, I think it's extremely interesting to also have this insight. What does it look like at national level in one of the many national levels that we have in Europe? And if I have to pick up one word from your presentation, it's empowered. I think this is a really, really important word, because we have a window of opportunity now. The EU HTA regulation has been put in place in January. So while there's some early lessons, I think it's really important that we also highlight what's going well. What does it mean from the patients? And I think empowered is one of the keywords I would like to keep in mind. And for everyone who has a time, you can see we are running over time, but I warmly invite you to stay on for 15 more minutes to keep the conversation going after our final presentation. And final presentation that is really key, and it goes back to what I'm saying about empowered. How do we make sure that patients are empowered in the process? Well, it's also by making the process more patient-friendly. And this is something that the Scottish Medicines Consortium has brilliantly been doing over the last few years with the development of the SIP, also known as the summary information for submitting patient groups, that you have developed and put in place in Scotland, Danielle, and you're also implementing in the UK. And so my questions to you, Danielle, are, can you give us an overview of what the SIP consists in and how it supports patient involvement? Thank you very much. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Josephine. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here today. And as the only non-EU member state panelist, it's been good to hear about the HTA regulation that we've been looking at from across the channel. And I hope I've not been put as the last speaker, as the outsider from own sins. So, yes, as Josephine said, my name is Daniel. I'm the public involvement advisor with the Scottish Medicines Consortium, or SMC. And as just said, I'd like to speak to you today about the summary information for submitting patient groups, or SIP form, an innovation in public involvement in HTA developed by the SMC in 2016. At that time, we were developing new processes to better involve patients and patient groups in our assessments. And the SIP form emerged as a collaborative project led by the SMC, developed in partnership with our patient groups and with some input from industry. So the purpose of the SIP is to provide patient groups with clear, accessible information about the medicine under assessment, its licence indication, its potential benefits and risks, and how it may impact patients and carers in Scotland. So importantly, the SIP form is a mandatory part of the pharmaceutical company's submission to the SMC, and it translates complex clinical information into a more digestible format, helping patient groups engage meaningfully in our assessment process. So the SIP form includes questions that summarises what the condition is intended to treat, how that condition is currently managed in the NHS in Scotland, how the medicine works and what its mechanism of action is, its effectiveness and how it compares to existing treatments, how the treatment is administered, whether it's oral or IV, any potential side effects and how they're managed. It also details information on the impact of the quality of life for the patients, families and carers. And then finally, we ask them to include any information about any potential equality issues that should be considered. So we require that all information in the SIP form comes from validated sources such as clinical trials or other studies that is included in the company's submission. And the SIP really, it's not intended to be quoted directly by the patient groups or in the written evidence. Instead, it serves as a foundation, helping patient groups understand the medicine and supporting them in gathering real-world insights and experiences from patients. speaking from my own personal experience as a former patient advocate myself, I've used the SIP to better understand a medicine. I've used it to help me design surveys that I've taken out to patient groups, and I've also used it to help develop interview questions to help me collect meaningful patient evidence for our written HTA submissions, and then also to use that evidence in any sort of meetings where we'd be representing the patient voice and sort of our patient and clinician engagement meetings, or indeed in front of our full SMC committee meeting. So in short, the SIP is a valuable tool that supports patient groups in contributing informed, relevant and impactful evidence to the SMC decision-making process. It is now a standard part of our public involvement approach, and we regularly hear from patient groups about how they value the SIP and how it enhances their understanding of the medicines that we assess. Thanks, Josephine.
Thank you, Daniel. And you were last but not least. I think finishing off with the SIP was really why we finished off with the SIP, was also to be more forward-looking. And we, make no secrets that we are advocating for the SIP to also be implemented within the EU HTA stakeholder networks the assessments at European level. And this goes back to what Valentina was mentioning earlier on our initiative in the HTA. It's also to integrate this form. So we are taking learnings from you in Scotland and the UK. So thank you very much for your work and these initiatives.